who buys corn? I mean, we buy stocks, we buy the Amazons, the Apples of the world, the Teslas, but do you buy corn? Commodities are unique, and most investors really have no grasp and understanding of the commodity market. But it is an incredible opportunity. Corn is in everything. It's in our gas, it's part of ethanol, it's in our food. I mean, corn is a global commodity that's always in demand. Recently, China has been a big gobbler intaker of corn, and the reason being is that because of their swine epidemic or pandemic they had years ago, their swine or pig supplies went down. So they are trying to repopulate their pig population. And what do they eat? They eat corn. Commodities, in particular corn, have a opposite correlation to the US dollar. And since June of last year, we have seen the commodity market, in particular corn, copper, energy, all make a move higher. Energy not so much, but more of the corns and coppers and agricultural side of things. And if you've been in corn or got into corn at the first of the year, you're up 50% or so per bushel. Okay, I know you don't buy bushels when you buy corn. You can buy corn through an ETF, symbol corn. So you have that ability to buy the commodity. The problem is we have seen a major spike in commodity prices, in particular corn. And I recently did a video where I talked about copper, and is copper starting to near the end of its bull market run. And the reason I created that video was because it was a headline in the Wall Street Journal. And when headlines start showing up in media, typically it's the beginning of the end, because the media is short-term thinking, like literally hours, maybe minutes time frame in their world. So when they see a big move in something like corn, like copper, they make a headline because it gets your attention. And you as an individual investor historically have seen that headline and you go buy it. And that is usually the last leg of that run in that asset. So in this particular reference of corn and copper, I've seen two headlines in the last week. One on copper, did a video on that, and now today, corn. When I see the popularity of those headlines and the retail investor coming to the party, they're typically too late. I was telling my wife today, which I think she was listening, I told her about, it's like going to a party and you were in high school and you went to this party and you showed up, and then all of a sudden everybody else starts to show up, and then more people, and the music's booming, the noise is at all-time highs, and there's just all of a sudden there's this vertical move in the intenseness and excitement in the party. And at that point, that's when you leave the party, because what you know is that intenseness, that exponential vertical move, always ends up with a police raid. Police raid the house because the neighbor blew it up and said, I can't believe they're making all this noise, come shut this down. The police show up, and it's always at that perfect peak in the party. Well, it's the same with the market. When I see the media, when I see the individual investor start talking about commodities, corn in this particular sense, then I start to wonder, are we about to get raided? Is this about to become the end? Now, when I say the end, I don't mean like now, tomorrow, but more of the beginning of it. And this is where you start to watch the movements and the rate of change in that position. And as you see that rate of change accelerate and you see that vertical move up, maybe it's time to move out. Now, the correlation with the US dollar and the commodity, in particular corn, is very interesting. It's opposite. Not too opposite, well, it's really opposite. When dollar goes down, corn goes up. When dollar goes up, corn comes back down a bit. But if you look at the trends, and I'm looking at 12-week moving average, that's 3 months, okay? 12 weeks or 90 days. And I'm looking at that 12-week moving average, and what it's telling me is corn's still going to go higher, and the dollar is going to continue to go down. Even though the dollar comes back up, hits that intermediate trend, and then pulls back lower, and we start to see lower lows and lower highs. We start to see that continuing devaluation of the dollar. Well, then to me, that is still a positive sign for that market. But I bring in that emotional effect, that euphoria. Ooh, corn is up 50%. I got to get in. You should have gotten in December. You should have gotten in June. Is it too late? Will there be a pullback? Probably. But it's that intermediate trend you're following, that 12-week period moving average. When you see a break in the 12-week moving average to the downside, you know that trade is starting to end. I'll give you an example. Look at Amazon on a weekly basis on a 12-week trend, run a SMA 12-week and see where it's at. It broke below its 12-week. It's now at its 50 period moving average. I prefer to use the 12-week, and the reason is it front runs the smart money, the hedge funds, the institutions. So the dollar's still devaluing, still going down. Looks like it'll break below 90 cents on the dollar. And corn seems to be still going up. But this is where this run has been going on for a long time. This is where you start to look at your macro moves in the economy and where are things going. Are they going to keep the dollar down this far? For how long? I mean, every country is doing this. They're devaluing their currency. So devaluation in currency, supply goes up. That's a form of inflation. Costs you more. At what point is corn, well, just too expensive? When do I go to the grocery store and I say, well, that cereal, those Frosted Flakes, well, it's not worth it anymore. And that was when supply starts to shrink, or demand starts to shrink, and supply outruns the demand. And that's when you see deflationary type of environment. So am I bullish on corn? I am bullish on corn. I've had a lot of questions about what's my take on copper. I've mentioned about copper getting to the beginning of the end. Am I bullish on copper? I am, but I've made money. If you own corn, I own corn. I've made some money in it. I'm starting to getting a little concerned that it's run its course. And so I start maybe trimming it back. At some point, all trends end. And at some point, the intermediate trend on corn will break. And at that point, you get out. You start lessening your exposure. Maybe you don't fully get out, but maybe you just bring it down to from a 10% overall allocation in the beginning, because commodities are more of a 10% allocation in comparison to stocks that are 6. I bring it down to 5, and then maybe I bring it down to 2 as that trend breaks. Oh, and there's one other indicator I'm following, and that is institutional sentiment. See, back in June, if you look back June of 2020, the institutions were short commodities. They were short corn in a big way. If you look at where they are today, they're very bullish and they're very long. And if you follow a contrarian approach to this, this would be another indicator that corn is nearing its top, nearing the beginning, nearing the end. Because usually institutional traders are typically behind the curve. When they're short, when they're super bearish, typically the market in that asset goes up. And when they're super bullish, typically the market goes south.